Today we're going to go over some liquidity pool etiquette and kind of an overview of the different pools. So I want to start with a disclaimer. We're not giving anybody financial advice here. We're simply putting this out so that you guys have all the information you need to make a good decision. In no way, shape, or form should you feel like you need to participate in any of the liquidity pools. And conversely, we don't want people to be confused and scared of them either. So I want to put this out there just on the front end, make sure everybody realizes that this is your choice. Everything is going to have risk. LP2 especially does have risk associated with it. But if you have the information about the pools and you understand the risks you're taking and the potential yield, you should be able to make a better decision. So let's start with an overview of the liquidity pools we have as well as the bear yield. So as most of you know, our bears right now are yielding 4.5 berries per day. And that only goes until November 10th. After November 10th, it's going to be 2 to 3 berries per day, and that's going to change based on whether or not you're locked in or not. So if you're not locked in, it's going to be 2 berries. If you are locked in, it's going to be 3. LP2 now, this is our liquidity pool. This is the pool where you pair ETH with berries. This pool yields 15,000 berries per day, and that number is spread evenly across all participants. So if there was just 3 participants in this pool making up equal percentages of the pool, it would be very easy numbers, right? It would be 5,000 berries to participant 1, 5,000 berries to participant 2, and 5,000 berries to participant 3. That spread is determined by the percent that you make up of the pool. And we'll do an example with this later so that you guys can understand how to calculate that yourself. Now, the single-sided is a similar concept, but it doesn't require ETH. It just requires berries. And because it's easier to do, it does not yield the same amount of berries as LP2. So the single-sided is just going to yield 3,000 berries per day, again, spread evenly across all participants. So in the same example, 3 people, equal percentages, each of them would get 1,000 berries. All right, so now we're going to jump over to Dextools and kind of talk about liquidity with the berry token as an example here. So you guys can find a link to this Dextools page in the official links in the Discord. We're going to kind of watch the life cycle of berry from the beginning to the end and see how liquidity sort of played a part in this price action. So this right here, this is when the berry token started existing. What I want you to notice from this area is these massive green candles, okay? These green candles are insane. We see a spike all the way up to 23 at the wick there. All right, so now I've got the chart basically pulled up to the very, very beginning of berries, and we can see some of the purchases that were made. We see one for 0.1, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, 0.15. I mean, scrolling through this, find me a large buy. I don't see anything. There's almost nothing. I don't even see one thing above 0.5 Ethereum. But look at the price action. I mean, we see a massive spike up to 23, okay? So that's low liquidity. The small amounts of Ethereum are moving this like crazy because there's no liquidity. Now watch the chart over time, okay? We get over here. We still have high volatility. Swing low of 990, swing high of 16. Swing low of 7, wick down to 6, swing high all the way up to 14, more than a 2x. This right here is wreckville. You do not want to be trading in this area. This is going to wreck a lot of people. If you think you're going to catch a top like this, you're not. A bot is always going to catch that. But now look as we move a little bit further. You can see liquidity gets added. Look at this massive dump here and then stability. Total stability. We still see dumps. You're never going to get rid of dumps. People are always going to be able to dump. But look at how much less this affects the chart than these. I mean, honestly, remember those numbers before, the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3? We're going to find much larger numbers down here. Look at this, 1.49 Ethereum, 2.3 Ethereum. I mean, 0.8, 1.4, 0.7. Multiple numbers of Ethereum are moving over here. And look at the price action. Less than 1 Ethereum moves over here. I mean, this is probably 1 Ethereum total, to be completely honest. Right here, it's right around 1 Ethereum that did that. This over here, 5, 6, 7, 8 Ethereum, right? So just that's what I want everybody to kind of pay attention to. Low liquidity, high volatility. All of this area right here, we had almost, well, this was 0 liquidity. Liquidity probably gets snuck in right here. Somebody basically found a backdoor into the contract. UI goes up. All the regular investors get into the contract. We get stability. So I'll kind of wrap it up with this. Basically, I just want you to remember that low liquidity, we're going to see high volatility, right? Conversely, high liquidity, we're going to see lower volatility. All right, now jumping back into the slideshow. All right, so now let's try and answer this question. What does a healthy pool look like? Well, in my opinion, a healthy pool is one where there's a lot of people participating. It's a pool where we spread the risk across everybody in the pool so that no one person can dump, right? And let me just give you a really quick example of what this kind of looks like, right? Let's just pretend we're in LP2. We know we get 15,000 berries that are spread across all of those participants. Now go back to the Dextools chart, right? The very, very beginning of liquidity. Let me just bring it back up again. Very, very beginning of liquidity, somewhere in this area, right? Dumpville, USA, okay? That is a scenario kind of more like this, right? Where there's some malicious whale, or whales, it could be more, that make up a huge chunk of the pie in LP2, right? Just to give you some numbers, if that whale had 60% of the pool at that time, they'd be making 9,000 berries per day just off of that pool. So a healthy pool is one where we keep moving the needle further and further towards a model like this, and then even to a point where it's 99% and 1%, and then reducing it even further from there, right? Just in this example, if this whale went from 60% down to 10% because a bunch of other people entered the pool, right now they're only making 1,500 berries per day, right? They're losing 7,500. They were getting 9,000 before, right? So this is basically reducing that person's impact that they can have on the market as a whole. All right, next thing I kind of want to bring up is just another disclaimer, and it's really this. Every single asset, cryptocurrency, stocks, gold, whatever, they're all subject to volatility. And so is our ecosystem token berry, right? So anybody's best guess as to what the price is going to do could be wrong, right? This fluctuates every single day, and it's depending on a lot of different factors. It depends on the token generation rate, which is something like about 30,000 tokens per day that we're generating with only 25% staked. The burn rate, which we have coming up here in about 7 days, we're looking at burning somewhere around 250,000 to 300,000 tokens. And then the market sentiment. The market sentiment really plays a huge role in this, and it determines the price a lot more than people realize. Basically, when somebody's thinking long term or somebody's thinking short term, they will make different moves in the market based on their sentiment. So if somebody's thinking long term, they might be buying more berries than they are selling. They might not be selling at all. If that happened, if they only purchased, the price would go up. Conversely, if somebody was feeling very bearish about the project, they might be selling berries every single time they get them, which would only make the price essentially go down. So just keep in mind that these three things play a part in the price. But if somebody tells you that it's strictly up or strictly down, just understand that that's not the case. All right, now let's jump into how we're going to calculate rates. What we're going to want for this is I'm going to basically use Notepad here, and we can use a calculator if we need it. Okay, so let me make sure you guys can see this. Let's see, test. Yeah, that looks okay. All right, so for this example, we're just going to make up some numbers here, but let's use LP2. Remember, LP2 has 15,000 berries per day distributed amongst everybody, okay? Let me bring this up a little bit more. Okay, so in this example, let's say there's 500 LP tokens total in the pool, okay? And let's say you have 2 LP tokens. Okay, so what you're going to do here is you're going to take your LP tokens, which is 2, divided by the total, 500. You're going to get a number which is 0.004 or 0.4%. You're going to take that number, you're going to multiply it by 15,000, which is what's distributed each day, and you're going to get 60 berries, okay? So in this example, we're getting 60 berries per day. Now let's talk about what you might do with your berries, okay? So I just really briefly want to touch on dollar cost averaging, right? Dollar cost averaging, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. We're going to bring up our trusty Notepad again. Okay, dollar cost averaging, which is called DCAing. This is a common investing term. Basically, it means you don't want to make a big purchase or sale all at once, okay? Let me bring this up so you guys can see it a little bit better. Okay, we don't want to make a big purchase or sale all at once. What dollar cost averaging says is that if I have $1,000 and I'm dollar cost averaging into anything, let's just pretend it's stocks, right? If I have $1,000 and I want to invest it, instead of investing it all at once, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 100 on day 1 and put it in. Okay, I'm going to take 100 on day 2 and put it in. Okay, and it doesn't have to be the same rate, right? Maybe I do 200 on day 3 and 400 on day 4, and now I'm at what, 200 left on day 5. Okay, this is just an example of what dollar cost averaging might look like. Okay, and we can dollar cost average in, and we can also DCA out. So the exact same way I mentioned making purchases for 100 each, 200, 400, whatever, the same thing happens when we're exiting. So instead of selling everything at once with stocks or whatever, berries, you can apply this to pretty much anything. We don't want to do that all at once, right? We want to do it in chunks so that we're making sure to get the best average price over a course of time. So really what I want to say about exiting, right? This goes back to kind of calling it best practices or etiquette, but really what we're trying to say here is we don't want to sell all our assets at once. Okay, we don't want to do this for 2 reasons. First reason, this can lead to price dumps, or rather giving into manipulation, okay? So what will usually happen here is, we'll just call this a manipulation example, okay? Whale makes a big sale, okay? They'll dump a bunch of whatever the asset is. Retail, or regular people, panic sell. After they see that big sale, they then cause a chain reaction of more sales. Okay, and then sometimes what will happen is the whale will buy that dip back up. Okay, and this is just a cycle. You can literally see this on Dextools. If you look at the first people to sell, a lot of the times they're the first people to buy after the price dumps. Okay, so that's the first reason, right? The second reason is that we cannot compound our earnings back into the pools. Okay, if we sell everything at once, we've got nothing left to reinvest. Compounding just means this. It means taking a certain percent of your earnings and reinvesting it, okay? Or reinvesting it back into the pool. So let's say we've got an example where maybe we have 800 excess berries and we don't know what to do with it, okay? We might take those berries and put it into the single-sided, right? If you have no ETH, that's fine. You can use the single-sided. You're going to use the single-sided pool. Okay? If you have ETH, you might use LP2. Okay? This depends on your appetite for risk. Okay? So just to give you an example of why compounding makes a lot of sense, well, let's say we did put that 800, we put it into the single-sided, okay? And just for example's sake, let's say there's 20,000 total berries in the single-sided. Remember how we do these calculations. You guys should be able to do this now. We take ours, we divide it by the total amount, right, which is 20,000. We get a number like 0.04. Okay, we're going to take that. Remember, we take that, we multiply it by the rate that that pool pays out. For single-sided, that's 3,000, okay? And we're going to get 120 berries per day because of that compound. So really what happened here is we didn't even lose this 800, right? We locked it up in another pool. So this is healthy for the ecosystem because we're not selling those berries. And then it's nice for us because we're getting a lot of extra berries per day, right? Figure out how long it takes to make that back. You take your total amount you invested, you divide it by the new rate you're getting, which is going to change. But for this sake, let's just say it stays the same. You're going to make that back in 6.66 days. Okay, so all we did was lock up some of our assets and then we made that back in 6.66 days. So if you've got a long-term vision, compounding can make a lot of sense, okay? If you have a short-term vision, you're more likely to sell. So just keep that in mind. There's people that are doing this and there's people that are doing this. You got to figure out which one you want to be. All right, so I'm gonna move on now. I'm gonna kind of wrap things up here. Let's just go over a summary here, and if there's any questions on this and stuff, a lot of us will be in the Discord answering questions all the time. So if you guys have more clarification, feel free to ask. But let's go over a summary of LP2 versus single-sided, okay? So the pros to LP2, right? It's that if we choose to compound our earned berries back into LP2, we're going to generate a lot of berries, right? The only cons to LP2 is that it does require ETH to pair. So if you don't have any ETH, you're probably going to have a hard time using LP2. And that's okay, right? Because LP2 has higher risk. So if we're not in LP2, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, right? If we have a low appetite for risk or we don't have any ETH, we might use the single-sided, right? What's the pros? Well, there's low risk, right? Why is there low risk with the single-sided pool? There's low risk because when I put berries into the single-sided pool, and then for some reason I decide to take my berries out, that number is going to be the exact same. It's not affected by any ratios. If you remember earlier, LP2, when you put your liquidity pool tokens in, they are determined by the current ratio of ETH to berries at that time. When you pull your LP out, the new ratio, if the ratio is changed, that new ratio will determine how much you get back. So again, you might get more berries, less ETH. You might get more ETH, less berries. It depends on the ratio. Single-sided, we don't have to worry about that. We put in berries, we get the exact same amount out, right? What are the cons? Well, it yields 1/5 of the amount of berries than LP2. So there's a lot less berries to go around in the single-sided. But again, single-sided pool's got a lot less risk associated with it compared to LP2. So just keep that in mind. All right, finally, just thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I just wanted to give you guys a final reminder. Just be careful out there. Be aware of the numbers you're entering any market in, all right? And try not to ape in if you can.